I want you to try a little thought experiment with me to kick things off today. Pull out your phone and just find a photo, any photo at all. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's that picture of your cat or the sunset from last night.
Okay, I am playing along. I have a picture of my breakfast.
Perfect. Now imagine you send that picture to a friend in London, and then you post it to Instagram, and then you email it to yourself.
Done. I mean, theoretically, it took what, maybe 5 seconds?
Yeah. And in those 5 seconds, you just created 3 perfect copies of that image.
Mm-hmm.
You still have the original, your friend has one, and Meta has one. The cost was literally 0, and the quality is identical across the board.
Which is really the miracle of the Internet of Information. I mean, we have spent the last 30 years building this massive global machine designed to copy and distribute data instantly.
Right. But now, try to send that same friend in London $10. You can't just email a $10 bill. Because if you send it to them, you can't keep a copy for yourself. If you could, money would just be worthless.
We would all be billionaires by lunchtime.
We would. And a loaf of bread would cost $1 trillion.
Yeah, that is the fundamental issue that cryptographers and economists call the double spend problem.
Right, the double spend.
Yeah.
And because the internet was built to copy things, not to move unique value, our financial system has to rely on this really archaic patchwork of banks and middlemen. Basically to verify that I actually gave up the money and you actually received it.
And it takes days.
And it costs fees.
Yeah.
It is, frankly, just a total mess.
It is a mess. And that disconnect, between the instant speed of information and the incredibly sluggish speed of money, that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We are looking at the transition from the Internet of Information to what people are calling the Internet of Value, or the IOV.
And this isn't just about making Venmo a little faster. We are talking about a fundamental replumbing of the global economy, transferring unique assets, currency, stocks, property rights, maybe even votes, instantly, securely, and without needing a chaperone to hold your hand through the transaction.
But as we were digging into the research for this deep dive, we realized something pretty quickly. This phrase, Internet of Value, it's not one happy, unified vision at all. It is actually a massive tug of war.
Oh, absolutely. It's a total battleground. You have the crypto purists who want to basically burn the banks down. You have the banks who just want to upgrade their servers. And then you have the regulators who are just trying to make sure the whole thing doesn't collapse on our heads.
So our mission today is to map out that battlefield for you. We are going to look at the competing definitions of the IOV, uncover the hidden costs of our current system, which are literally trapping trillions of dollars, and finally, look at the sharp critiques regarding privacy and systemic risk.
And before we get into the weeds, we have to give credit where it's due. This deep dive was curated by Moses Sam Paul. He is the author of The Internet of Value, an open protocol stack for an equitable economy which optimizes for individual well-being.
That is quite a comprehensive title, but Moses really did the heavy lifting here. He pulled together sources ranging from the Bank for International Settlements to these really deep-cut crypto researchers. So we have a stack that covers the entire spectrum of this debate.
All right, so let's start with the what. Because if you ask 3 different experts what the Internet of Value is, you are going to get 3 entirely different answers. But they all sort of hinge on one core concept, the teleporter.
I really love that analogy from the Viva Power report.
It makes it instantly click, right? They said the current Internet is basically a Xerox machine. It copies. But the Internet of Value is a teleporter. The asset disappears from here and simultaneously appears over there. No copies.
Exactly. And to make that teleporter work, you have to solve that double spend problem we just talked about. Historically, we solved it with ledgers kept by centralized banks. The bank looks at the ledger and says, okay, Alice has $10 less, Bob has $10 more.
But the first definition of the IOV, let's call it the academic or the purist view, says we don't need the bank to do that anymore.
Right. We saw this specifically in the work by researchers like Horst Treibelmeier and Ian Strong. Their definition is incredibly strict. They define the IOV as the instant transfer of assets over the internet between peers without the need for intermediaries.
That, without intermediaries part, that is the whole rebellion right there.
It really is.
Yeah.
This view relies entirely on blockchain or distributed ledger technology. The code essentially replaces the bank. The trust isn't placed in Chase or HSBC anymore. The trust is in the mathematics of the network. It is a completely decentralized vision where individuals just transact directly.
So that is definition A, the Wild West approach. Burn the institutions, let the code run the world. But then we have definition B, which felt a lot more like a corporate boardroom.
Yeah, this is the view from inside the banking world itself. We looked at sources from Ripple, Citi, and specifically Chris Larsen, who is the co-founder of Ripple.
And Larsen's take is really interesting because he is not trying to kill the banks at all. He says the internet of value isn't about destruction, it's about connection.
Right. He frames it entirely as a plumbing problem. Think about the global banking system today. It's essentially a series of walled gardens.
Right. You've got SWIFT, which is one massive garden. Mm-hmm. You've got the ACH system here in the US, that's another one. SEPA in Europe is another.
And those gardens simply do not speak the same language. If you want to move money from a regional US bank to a bank in France, it is not a smooth digital flow. It's this clunky series of messages, currency conversions, manual compliance checks.
It's like trying to send an email from Gmail to Outlook, but having to print it out, fax it to a processing center, have someone literally translate it into French, and then type it back into a computer.
That is an uncomfortably accurate way to describe correspondent banking. So Larsen's vision of the IOV is all about interoperability. He talks about protocols like the Interledger Protocol or ILP that act as a universal translator. The whole goal for this camp is simply that value moves like information.
So the purists want to cut out the middleman entirely. The corporates just want to make the middleman hyper-efficient. They want to upgrade the plumbing so the walled gardens can talk.
And then there is definition C, the Web3 view.
This is where things get a little philosophical. We looked at notes from the venture capital firm A16s in the macro rooms, Raoul Pal.
This view is fascinating to me because it goes way beyond just moving money. Raoul Pal actually calls it a paradise for behavioral economics.
Which sounds pretty intense, but it basically means that in this version of the IOV, literally everything is an asset.
Correct. It is fundamentally about ownership. In the internet of information, you read and write content. In the internet of value, you own it. Your personal data, your digital identity, your engagement on social media, it is all tokenized.
This ties right into the whole creator economy angle. Mm-hmm. Instead of a platform like YouTube or TikTok taking all the value from my posts, I actually own the token that represents my contribution to the network. I can trade it, sell it, build a community around it.
It's a massive shift. It moves us from renting space on the internet to actually owning a piece of the infrastructure.
Okay, so we have these three competing visions. The decentralized purists, the interoperable bankers, and the Web3 owners. But I want to pause here for a second, just play devil's advocate. Right? Because I can pull out my phone right now, open Venmo or Apple Pay, and tap a button that says sent. It feels completely instant to me. Why do we need to rebuild the entire global financial architecture if I can already buy a latte in 2 seconds?
Because what you are seeing on your phone is a facade.
A facade.
It is a user interface trick. When you Venmo me $10, the app updates our balances on the screen instantly, so we feel good about it. But the actual money, the hard settlement between your bank and my bank has not happened yet. That still takes days to clear through the back end.
So Venmo is basically just writing an IOU and showing it to me on a free screen.
Precisely. And look, for buying a latte, that delay doesn't really matter. The coffee shop trusts the IOU. But when you scale that friction up to the massive global economy, the costs are staggering. Which brings us to what the research calls the Nostro-Vostro problem.
Yes, this was the specific data point in Moses' research stack that absolutely blew my mind. The $27 trillion problem.
It is a massive number. Let's unpack how we get there. Because settlement takes days, banks inherently don't trust each other to pay up immediately. If I am a bank in New York and I need to facilitate $1 million in payments with a bank in Tokyo, I can't just send the order and hope the money actually arrives next Thursday.
Right. The Tokyo bank isn't going to release funds to their customer until they know for absolute certain the money is there.
Exactly. So to solve this, the New York bank has to pre-fund an account in the Tokyo bank. They have to park a giant pile of cash there, just sitting dormant, acting as collateral so the Tokyo bank feels safe processing the daily transactions.
It's trapped capital.
It is completely dead money. It is not being invested. It's not building roads or bridges. It's not paying wages. It is just sitting in a vault. Ripple and Vivo Power estimate there is roughly $27 trillion sitting in these pre-funded Nostro-Vostro accounts globally.
That is just wildly inefficient. I really like the analogy one of the sources used. It's like keeping a suitcase of cash at every single one of your friends' houses, just in case you decide to order pizza with them 6 months from now.
It sounds totally ridiculous when you say it like that, but that is literally the foundation of the correspondent banking system. So the internet of value promises on-demand liquidity. If I can teleport the asset instantly, if the settlement is real time, I don't need to pre-fund that account in Tokyo anymore.
And suddenly you release $27 trillion back into the productive global economy. That is a massive economic unlock.
It really is. But the benefits aren't just for massive global banks. There was a really fascinating study in the stack from Solomon and Robbins about knowledge markets.
Please, this is the micropayments argument.
Yeah. Think about the inherent friction of money today. If I want to pay an expert online 10 cents for a really good answer to a highly specific question, I basically can't.
No, you can't, because the credit card processing fee is going to be 30 cents plus 3%. The current system literally cannot handle small value transfers. It's like trying to mail a single grain of rice using a massive shipping container.
Exactly. But Solomon and Robbins looked at using the Lightning Network, which is a layer built on top of Bitcoin, to enable frictionless micropayments.
And what they found in that study was so cool. They found that offering even tiny microscopic incentives, like 1 penny, literally 1/100th of a pound, significantly improved the quality and the speed of answers on Q&A platforms.
It comes down to basic behavioral psychology, but it is incredibly powerful. When you remove the friction of the transaction, you unlock entirely new human behaviors. It turns asking a stranger for a favor into a viable market transaction.
So we unlock the trillions in dead capital for the big banks, and we unlock the pennies for the everyday creators. And then, of course, there's the massive inclusion aspect, the unbanked.
This is huge. We currently have 1.7 billion people globally who have no access to traditional banking, but a massive percentage of them have smartphones.
And the reason they are unbanked isn't usually because they don't want a bank account. It's because they are simply too expensive for the traditional banks to serve.
Exactly. When you factor in brick and mortar branches, compliance teams, legacy server maintenance, it costs a bank real money to maintain a customer account. If you only have $50 to your name, the bank actively loses money by taking you on.
But if the internet of value is just software,
then the marginal cost to service a new customer drops to near zero. Suddenly, those 1.7 billion people can actually enter the global digital economy. This aligns directly with what the research calls social and resources value awareness, using this technology specifically for equity.
Okay, so far this all sounds amazing. We fix the rusty plumbing, we free up the trapped capital, we bank the unbanked. But this deep dive isn't a sales pitch. And the title of our show today includes the phrase, a risky necessity.
Right. We do need to temper the optimism here.
That phrase comes from a paper by Paolo Tosca in Frontiers in Blockchain. I actually found his perspective really grounding. He argues that the internet of value is basically inevitable. It's being driven by these unstoppable mega trends like datafication and platformization, but that we are walking blindly into a minefield.
He identifies several critical risks that we really have to understand if we're going to build this right. The first big one is systemic risk.
This connects directly to how the network itself is physically built.
Right. Think about the current banking system. We complain that it's slow, yes, but because it is highly compartmentalized, because of those walled gardens, if one small regional bank fails, it doesn't necessarily crash the entire global economy instantly.
The inefficiency actually acts like a fire break in a forest.
Exactly. But the Internet of Value is designed by definition to be hyper-connected and frictionless. Tosca points out this paradox, the network topology that is the most efficient, where everyone is instantly connected to everyone else, is often the least robust.
So if one critical node fails, say a major stablecoin suddenly collapses or a massive smart contract gets hacked, the financial contagion can spread instantly.
Instantly and globally. We saw a slow motion preview of this in the 2008 financial crisis, but that crisis moved at the speed of human decisions and board meetings. An IOV crisis would move at the speed of automated algorithms. We are essentially trading stability for speed.
That is frankly terrifying. Like we were building a Formula One race car, but we forgot to install the brakes.
And then there's the second minefield, which Tosca calls the privacy paradox.
This is the one that really gets me. You hear crypto enthusiasts always talking about transparency, like it is the ultimate virtue. Everything is on the public ledger. Trust, but verify.
And that transparency is exactly the problem. Tosca argues we desperately need privacy-enabling electronic value exchange. Because think about it, if every single transaction is recorded permanently on a public ledger,
then if someone manages to link my anonymous wallet address to my real-world identity, they can see everything. Every cup of coffee I bought, every doctor I paid, every political donation I ever made, it's public record forever.
It becomes the ultimate panopticon. But here is the massive tension regulators want that transparency. They demand to see the ledger to stop money laundering, evade sanctions, and track terrorism financing. But everyday users need privacy to prevent corporate profiling and state surveillance.
The Internet of Value sits right dead center in the middle of that war.
It really does. And speaking of regulators, the state is not just watching this happen from the sidelines. There's a whole section in the research stack about the erosion of state power, highlighted by Richard Martin.
This is the geopolitical heavy lifting of the topic. For centuries, the sovereign state has held the absolute monopoly on money. They control the supply, they set the interest rates, they run the economy.
And the IOV directly challenges that monopoly. You suddenly have digital oligarchies, these massive big tech companies trying to issue their own global coins. You remember Libra from Facebook?
Oh man, the regulators killed that so bad.
Because it actively threatened their sovereign control. So you have this massive three-way fight going on, the state, big tech, and the decentralized crypto purists.
But the state is fighting back with its own technological vision now. The BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, they call their concept the Finternet.
I do love that term, the Finternet.
It sounds super catchy, but it's basically the central banker's answer to crypto, right?
It is. The BIS envisions what they call a unified ledger. Imagine a digital platform where all assets, tokenized fiat money, stocks, bonds, property live together. But unlike the Wild West crypto version, this one is programmable, fully legally compliant, and ultimately controlled by the central banks.
So it is utilizing the underlying technology of crypto, but keeping the absolute control with the Federal Reserve.
Exactly. They want the hyper-efficiency without the anarchy. They want to tokenize the world, but they want to keep it firmly under a regulated umbrella to ensure stability.
Which naturally brings us to the final major risk Vasca mentioned, social welfare risk.
Right. This is the reality of the digital divide. If we move the entire global economy to this high-speed, algorithmic, tokenized system, who gets left behind?
Yeah. And participating in the economy requires managing cryptographic private keys, understanding cold storage wallets, or even just having uninterrupted high-speed internet. My grandmother's going to have a very bad time.
And there's the deeply concerning risk of algorithmic exclusion. If the new unified ledger uses AI to determine creditworthiness instantly based on your digital footprint, and the algorithm decides you are a risk, you aren't just denied a bank loan, you could be effectively deleted from the modern economy.
So where does this actually leave us? On one hand, we have this incredible technology that acts like a magic teleporter for value. It could fix the rusty plumbing of the global economy, unlock trillions in trapped capital, and bring 1 billion unbanked people into the fold.
But on the other hand, it could create an incredibly fragile, hyper-connected house of cards. Or worse, a total surveillance state where every penny you spend is tracked and algorithmic bias locks people out of society.
It feels like we are at a really pivotal moment in history here.
We absolutely are. And I think the key takeaway for you listening is that the Internet of Value isn't just one single piece of software. It is a convergence. You have the protocols like Interledger trying to be the universal language. You have the assets like stablecoins and CBDCs trying to be the fuel. And you have these wildly competing visions, Web3 ownership versus modernized banking fighting over who gets to drive the car.
So for us just watching this unfold, what should we really be paying attention to?
Honestly, stop watching the price of crypto.
I will try, but I make no promises on that.
Seriously, though, the real shift to watch is the transition from speculation people gambling on coins to actual utility. The Internet of Value becomes real when you stop noticing it, when it just becomes the invisible background plumbing of the world.
Like email. I don't sit around thinking about SMTP protocols when I hit send on a message. I just expect the message to arrive instantly.
Exactly. When you can send $50 to a friend in Kenya as easily and cheaply as sending them a WhatsApp message, and you have absolutely no idea if it used a blockchain, a central bank rail, or a correspondent bank in the background, that is when the Internet of Value has officially arrived.
I love that, Femi. The ultimate goal of this massive technological revolution is actually invisibility.
Precisely.
You know, all of this brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with. We started this deep dive with the analogy of the Internet of Information. 30 years ago, we thought the internet would purely democratize knowledge and set everyone free.
And it did do that.
It absolutely did. But it also unexpectedly gave us massive data monopolies, surveillance capitalism, and algorithms that hijack our attention for profit. It was a very sharp, double-edged sword.
We were pretty naive. We simply didn't see the systemic costs coming until it was too late.
Right. So as we build this new Internet of Value, are we just doomed to repeat that exact same history? Are we actually liberating money and giving ownership back to the individual? Or are we just building a faster, more efficient, and far more surveillance-heavy cage?
That is the trillion-dollar question right there. But I will say this, unlike the first internet, where we kind of just stumbled blindly into the consequences, this time we can actually see the risks coming. Thanks to researchers like the ones Moses highlighted, we have the map.
Let's just hope we actually use that map to make better choices this time around. Next time you tap your phone to pay for a coffee, take just a second to think about the invisible plumbing underneath. It is changing a lot faster than you think.
It certainly is.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We will catch you on the nenext one.
All right. So, here are my thoughts on this. First of all, none of these definitions say what is the end goal here. Okay, so you move money fast, you unlock this $27 trillion. That is this Nostra Vostra thing. The analogy was good, right? Like the suitcase of cash, like you're leaving at your friends with the hope that 6 months down the line or whenever you're with them, you're going to get a pizza. So, but what happens when you unlock this? Where is this money going to trickle down, so to speak, right? And then the question of algorithmic exclusion, which we all know, like, most people haven't participated in the so-called crypto revolution because of how complex it is to set up your wallet, store it, you lose your wallet, it's gone. And even people who are tech savvy have kind of lost it because the exchange is either hacked or you trust wrong people and whatnot, right? Anyway, so fundamentally there are issues with the way we talk about speed in terms of moving money. And as you can see, there are two themes that are coming up. One is none of these definitions talk about value capture. Everything is really about value exchange, right? It's money exchange, which is what Bitcoin and crypto essentially made possible. But now they have expanded the term to call it as value instead of money. But it's still about some value being exchanged. But what's the optimization function, right? Like, okay, you frictionlessly move value, and then what happens? We don't know that yet. And if you say you don't know that yet, then your system is gonna create, because it's a complex system, right? And if you don't have an optimization function, then it's gonna create its own optimization function, and it's gonna optimize for speed, and we don't know what are the unintended consequences of that. That is one. The second thing is, let's look at a fundamental equation here, which is the production function, right? Because we talk so much about value, but where does value come from? Value doesn't come just from money. Money itself is an abstraction of labor that has gone into creating these goods and services, which you call as something of value that you want to exchange, right? And where is this? Did you listen to one conversation or one definition about labor being brought into this picture? It's not, because it's not quantifiable, so to speak. Only the abstracted output of labor, which is something of value, is quantifiable. So you're playing around with this, I'll move faster. I don't need this centralized bank to do all the settlement for me. I will have an algorithmic way to solve the Byzantine problem, yada, yada, yada. Like, but it's still, you're playing around with this money or the value that was created. But fundamentally, we have to look at where does value even come from. And if you go all the way back to Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, he talks about value of something is the labor that has gone into something or the labor that you can leverage. Okay, then you can go into Marxian way of looking at this, communism way of looking at it. But essentially, some way you have to talk about the labor or the time that has gone into creating something of value. Then you can really think about, okay, how quickly can I move this value, right? Which is frictionless value exchange that we are talking about. So this is where we differ. I differ in the way we define the Internet of Value. will be in the next video. But essentially, I want to leave you with these questions, which is, if output is a function of capital, labor, and productivity, why do we talk about this one particular variable, capital, so much? And we are hell-bent on making it as frictionless as possible. Granted, the plumbing is important, not questioning that. But if the plumbing is so frictionless and you're going to put shit through that, then what's the point? Okay, maybe you're optimizing for the flow of washroom to your septic tank, and then flow of shit is what you're optimizing for, then it's okay. But what about water that's going to go through this plumbing? Why is no one thinking about it? What I mean by water here could be labor or could be time, right? So that is one. Why are we not talking about labor? And the second thing is, what are you optimizing for? What is the speed giving you? What is the reason for this frictionless movement of capital? Like, what is it giving you? I don't understand, right? So what's the optimization function? So anyone who is, hell-bent on thinking that Bitcoin or Ethereum or crypto in general, or Web3 for that matter, or Web 3.0 or Web 5 or Web 420, doesn't matter, right? Like Web XYZ. Tell me the optimization function. And second thing is, where is the variable called labor in this whole definition and perspective that you guys have about Internet of Value? I'll leave you with that. Think about it. And tomorrow we will define what the Internet of Value is all about and what we are building is all about. And we'll define it, and then we'll go about conceptually explaining in simple terms as to how we'll go about implementing it and making it a reality. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for your time. See you in the next video.